Welcome back, guys. Another day here at Dean's. Tiffany is not with us today. She is working. So today we're going to show you guys, I think we got the starter solution all figured out. Going to get it mounted up and test it, make sure that we don't have any alignment issues. I think we got a few other little random things we're going to do, but it'll be a little bit jumping around today, but show you guys the progress as we go. All right, so we got our J35 test engine here. You guys kind of saw this at the end of the last video. We did end up drilling a hole in the adapter plate. This is for the snout of the starter to go. The starter's got to be able to sit far enough back in here that it can engage on the ring gear. So put our mock-up bell housing. As you can see, we had to do some trimming. It does work well enough that it clears both of our mounting holes for the transmission, and it also, we barely had to do any cutting on the ribs. So the transmission strength is all there. This was a vent. We will not have to cut this on the good transmission. We ended up being able to clear this, so this will have to stay, this will end up staying intact. So all we had to do was just notch out the transmission, and yeah, like I said, I mean, we're also not making 800 horsepower, so we really aren't going to have any issues with breaking bell housing or anything like that. All right. So I think we talked about it a little bit in the last video. This obviously does make the starter a little bit more difficult to access if you had to replace or something at the track, but a starter is not an item that is going to prevent us from finishing a race or even starting a race. We can always push start the car. So this is a piece that a good friend of mine machined. Beautiful piece, fits on here, I mean, perfect. So goes in here nice. And so the starter basically will sit just like that. I still have to drill and tap these holes. This almost fit in the stock tunnel of the FRS since it's so wide from the boxer engine. Dean did beat the tunnel a little bit to clear this, but everything fits. I mean, we got plenty of room, and I mean, this is really going to be the solution to this particular problem that we're having. So a few other things that we have coming down the works. Those of you guys that know about J-Series know about the kind of the water port issue. This engine has to sit so far. I mean, we are like a ½ inch from the back of these bolts to the firewall. So we don't have a lot of room for the water ports in the back. P2R is sending us some of their block offs, water plates that we're gonna probably use, given that we have enough room. If we have to, we might put a fitting in here with a T and go AN and out the side, I don't know yet. And then you also have your water pump, which is in the center, that is gonna feed out here and both go out the side as well. We're gonna be running electric water pump, so we'll pull the water pump off, cut the fins off, so that it's basically just an idler for the timing belt. Also, those of you that don't know, the EGR ports on the back of J-Series heads, these are actually already tapped. I think these are 1/4 inch or 3/8 MPT from the factory. So you actually don't even have to put a plate on these. You can just put NPT plugs in here, because both these heads are actually the exact same head. One's just flipped the other way. So everything is kind of pretty modular on these engines, which really makes working on them and modifying them super easy. So I'm gonna get this pulled off. We're gonna drill and tap the first hole for this starter, get the first hole put in, and then we'll use like a matchbook or a piece of cardboard to shim the gear on the starter to the flywheel. We don't want to have too much engagement. We want to have a little bit of air gap there. So we'll go ahead and put a shim in there with one bolt in. Then I'll be able to swing the starter where it needs to go and use a transfer punch on the other hole to get the exact alignment perfect. All right, we got the plate all drilled, tapped, and mounted. Starter's all mounted up. We tested it, and I mean, I'll show you guys. Screwdriver. So starter engages and disengages as it's supposed to. Everything seems good. So we're going to notch the new or the actual transmission bell housing to match our testing one. and then pretty much good to go. We're gonna drop this in the car, make sure that this clears in the tunnel, and that project's finished. We'll be able to go on to some of the other smaller projects. This was probably the most important thing. We had to make sure we get to work before we committed to anything else. So. Just a touch further back. Yeah, we got bell covers on, but right there is about as low as it was before. The motor's tilted just a touch.
Oh, yeah, we got clearance for days.
The motor's gonna have to tip forward like that, probably.
Good, it's got to go down a little bit more in the front.
Yeah, whole thing needs to go down. Well, yeah, just a touch, not very much. How much clearance you got? I mean, you good?
The starter's right up against it right now. How far can we go back?
It's gonna go back at least another ½ inch, if not 3/4.
It's going to fit the way we want it to. It's really close right now.
Okay.
I mean, right there it will work. That's not an issue. We'll have to stick the real transmission on it and verify it. I'll clearance it out a little bit more before we put the other tranny
You
on.
need a Sharpie, or you kind of see where you
I know exactly where it's got to go.
Okay.
It's just going to be the top corner.
Okay.
So, yeah, that looks good.
Pull her out and you can go to dinner.
That looks really good.
Good to go?
We're good to go. We'll put the other transmission on it and get the tranny cross member in place and get the height set for the level. And we'll be in good shape.
Back here out at the shop at Dean's today, finishing up the starter. Starter's all done. You guys saw us crank it over a minute ago. Dean got the starter all fit to the new transmission. Bell housing all cut, transmission's on. So that project's done. A couple other projects that we have going on this week is 2 pedals. So this was our S2000 pedal that we ran in the FRS for the cable throttle body. We have to switch to, well, back to a stock FRS pedal since we're going to be drive-by-wire on the new J series. So we'll have to fit this to the car. They're pretty similar, kind of change the angle, nothing too crazy. And then another kind of fun project that's going to be interesting is this is a stock rear cross member from the FRS. We talked about it in the last episode where we're going to make a custom sway bar setup for this. So these tabs here are the factory tabs that hold the sway bar, and they actually flex quite a bit once you get a heavy bar in the back. So we're actually going to cut these tabs off, cut this tab off, and we're actually going to make a piece of chromoly tubing that'll come off curve and go across the back of this, and that will hold the new spline bar that will go across, and it will have arms that go in here and hook to the lower control arms. So last episode I showed you guys I bought 4 different bar thicknesses, old NASCAR bars that we're going to be able to run. So that'll allow us to have a much wider range of rear sway bar adjustments. Since we run so much in the rain, it's very tough. With this last season, our choice was either run the bar or run no bar. Anything in between really wasn't a big enough change for it to make a difference. So having 4 different bar variations will allow us to run a soft bar in the rain and still have a bar. Because with no bar, the car just doesn't want to turn, and it really is, it's just a hard car to drive, especially if the track starts to dry out. Then you just have a car that understeers everywhere. So having a wider range of bar adjustability is going to make a big difference. Another thing we got done is these are the old KWs, Club Sports that we had on the car the last couple seasons. No complaints at all. They have treated us really well. I mean, we think we've ran pretty much every spring rate humanly possible on them in the last season, and they've performed really well. We were able to get our hands on some MCS two-way remotes from a friend of ours. One of them is damaged, has a bent shaft, so we're gonna get these shipped out and get a new shaft put in and get them checked over. We ran them on the shock dyno yesterday, and we were pretty happy with the results compared to the KWs as far as rebound control. So should really help us be able to run the stiffer spring that we want to run for this season with the heavier engine and with the little bit larger tire we're allowed to have. So hopefully with that setup, we'll be able to get it dialed in quite a bit better with the MCSs than we could with the KWs and the new sway bar adjustment. So I think other than that, next weekend we hopefully have motor mounts and all the miscellaneous pieces that we need for getting the engine set in the car permanently. And let me think, then we got oil pans we got to make, we got brakes we got to get done, and then we'll be rebuilding the OS Geiken rear diff. You guys will get to see that. We're gonna take it apart, check it over, look through the discs, and get that reassembled. And then we have some new axles, as well as miscellaneous other little suspension components. But finally getting pretty close to the assembly phase. So thanks for tuning in, and please subscribe.